Guys, welcome to another episode of Dangerous Ideas with Deano. I'm going to let Harrison introduce our guest today, Bart Janowski. Harrison, what are we talking about today? What's going on?
Thank you, Dean. Today we are joined by
Joined by
the Bart Janowski.
The beautiful Bart Janowski.
Bart Janowski is the principal of Deano Family Law.
You know
Been
what?
practicing.
Now, sorry to interrupt already. You give me Bart Simpson vibes now that I've looked at that. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Well, I really loved when Bart Simpson came
Can
out.
I introduce our guest?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Bart Janowski, principal of Deano Family Law, practicing law for 21 years, 7 in family law. And our guest today, Bart, has carved out an interesting niche for himself in the family law bracket, and that is that, Bart, you provide fixed fee services for people seeking legal representation in family dispute.
Yeah, predominantly. Well, Dean Harrison, thanks for having me on, first of all. Thank you very much. And
welcome.
I guess what we do is fixed fee family law, which for a lot of people is something that they desire, that they want. I'll just put a proviso on that litigation is generally kind of like a hybrid between fixed fee and time-based billing still. There's a lot of variables that you just can't capture. But certainly for pretty much all the non-litigious stuff, we are fixed fee. I've been in the law for 21 years. Did start doing family law along with a mixture of other things when I started out. But in the last 7 years, exclusively family law. Happy to come here today and talk about it.
So people can come to you and say, I've got this dispute with my brother or whatever over a will or whatever, and here's the general gist of what's going on, and you can give them a fixed fee of how much it might cost to deal with that problem. Is that right?
So that's good you asked the question so we can clarify. When we talk about family law, we're talking about relationships, so marriages, de facto relationships, those types of families. We're not talking about estate litigation, family provision claims, stuff like that.
Dean hasn't gone through the family law breakup yet. He will one day when Amy comes to her senses. But
let's hope not, because I think that divorce and separation, it's probably the single most destructive thing you can do to yourself financially. So do try to avoid it. But if it's unavoidable, then, it is what it is.
Yep.
Bart just said basically that marrying a woman is the most destructive thing you can do to yourself financially.
No. Breaking up with one, getting
Oh,
divorced.
right.
Not the marrying part.
Right.
The marrying part's fine if you stay together.
Man or woman, whichever. But yeah, it is for a lot of people very stressful and
Do you find, because obviously you represent men and women, both sides of the breakup, essentially is what I'm getting at. Do you find that one, like men or women, come in more asking you, okay, like I really want you to I want you to make this hurt, a scorched earth on the other party. Do you find that that's more men or women?
I tend to work very hard not to necessarily attract people who have that mentality. So kind of, I don't know, kind of the vibes that you give out kind of come back and you attract those kind of people if you give out the wrong vibes. I try not to give out those kind of vibes. I don't want to make the process more difficult than it already is. And I think it's really important, although it's difficult, but you need to try and take the emotion out of it and try to be rational, especially if there's children involved. So you don't want
Good
to
answer.
I think that's
Very diplomatic answer. Very diplomatic.
This is being recorded.
We'll get the real story after, don't worry. No, but I'm interested to know, what is the most common family law dispute? Is it divorce? Is it wills? Is it something else?
Well, obviously, parenting and property are the two big issues. Like these days, divorce is not a big deal. It's not like before 1975 when the Family Law Act was enacted. Before that, we had the Matrimonial Causes Act, 1969. So that was reformed as part of, I think, the late. I can't remember. There's a big period of reforms in the 60s and 70s.
Great lawyer, guys. He has no idea what year this law was enacted.
Gough Whitlam reformed the law. I think it was under his government.
Yep.
And the thing about it, before 1975, you had to be separated for 5 years to get divorced. And you actually had to have a reason for getting divorced. So the reasons were like adultery, drunkenness, cruelty, I think was one reason. So you have to get private investigators to investigate the other party, catch the.
This sounds like an average marriage you're describing.
Well, it's a lot better these days. You just need to be separated for a year, and there's
1
no,
year and it was
and there's no reason required.
No fault has been
No fault,
introduced,
yeah.
correct?
When was that? But I thought it was because I did get divorced when I was around 30, which is a long time ago now. I thought it was 2 years back then, like 15 years ago or so, that you had to be separated
No,
for.
I don't know. No, as far as I know, now it's just 1 year and has been 1 year of separation. And of course, de facto relationships you can just separate. When one party says to the other the relationship is over, and sometimes doesn't say that. But yeah.
How much of your job would you say is almost like guidance counseling, and how much of it is lawyering? So I imagine you'd be guiding your clients through a range of emotions. There's a lot of emotions attached to the breakup itself, especially when there's children involved. How much would you say you spend time-wise sort of being an empathetic ear to a client and then also actually working on the legal side of the issue?
I think only with a light touch, because you have to resist the temptation to try and be the expert in everything. As a lawyer, we have our limited areas of expertise, and those are the things that people want to talk to you about. I don't think most people come to me wanting that kind of psychological support. And if I sense that that's what they need, I will tell them, look, you need some support during this process. Right. I'm not here to be your psychologist. You're wasting your time and money talking to me about these things. And frankly, I'm not qualified to give you that advice. But you need to have some supports around you, whether that's friends, family who are going to stand by you, and not post things about your divorce on Facebook, by the way.
Good advice.
Or whether it'll be professionals. But, build some supports. You're probably going to need them.
But what is some of the most interesting cases? I'd like to know, have you ever had to deal with a non-monogamous relationship, a situation where there's a man and multiple wives? What happens in that situation in a legal battle? Have you ever seen anything like that in your career?
Yes, I have. I'll probably be limited in what I can say because proceedings are still ongoing. But yes, these things do happen. As you can imagine, it's very complicated. It's complicated already when there's a conventional husband and wife or of a relationship involved when there's only two people. But when there's three, as you can imagine, it gets very complicated. I mean, some people have totally separate families, that they might have had them long-term relationships with two totally separate families, children of two totally different families, might or might not have been aware of each other. There might also be financial agreements that they might or might not have signed between them. So yeah, it's a huge, difficult mess to untangle. And I definitely have a lot of sympathy for judges who have to deal with these non-monogamous situations. Very difficult. Obviously, you can't legally be married to two people at the same time, but there are people out there who are married to one person and carrying on a de facto relationship with someone else, or two simultaneous de facto relationships. Or the other thing that catches a lot of people out is a lot of people are in a relationship that they don't consider to be a de facto relationship. And then later on, they find out that maybe they are in a de facto relationship. So if they'd actually...
Can you explain that a little bit further?
So there might be people who know somebody else. They might be very good friends. They might travel together. They might not live with each other and have a relationship, but they don't consider themselves to be partners, life partners, but the other one does. And then when that relationship breaks up, suddenly one says, "Oh, hang on, we were never a de facto couple," and the other one says, "Yes, we were." And then suddenly they're involved in a litigation about whether they were or were not a de facto couple. That's actually a surprisingly common thing that you come across. And those people could have saved themselves a lot of trouble if they'd had a financial agreement, binding financial agreement.
Do you need to be having sex to be considered a couple?
No.
Really?
No,
wow.
So there's nowhere in the legislation that says this is what a couple is.
Really?
There's indicia, so there's indicators. And it's you have to look at the sum totality of the relationship. And that's what makes it difficult, because people will view things differently and attach different significance to things. But if you want to avoid getting caught in the situation where you're deemed to be in a de facto relationship, you've got to be really, really thoughtful and careful about what you do. Appearing in photos together, going to parties together, meeting each other's family. Like, you're on a path of probably being in a de facto relationship, you know, even if whether you intend it or not.
Podcast together.
Podcast together. Yeah, so that catches a lot of people out, and you know, I think assume that you're in a de facto relationship and get a financial agreement put in place. That might be the answer, you know, or get something explicitly in writing, although that you know, saying we are not in a relationship. I don't know. I haven't come across someone doing that, but you know, something to think about.
It's a real fucking vibe killer right there. Hey, can you just sign this paperwork that says we're not in a relationship? Nothing personal, but I just need you to sign this paperwork.
There was a thing that came out, it wasn't even that long ago, where it was like consent paperwork people would have to sign for like one night stands.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like the world's
probably-
gone a bit
yeah.
too crazy in that direction.
I think the whole de facto relationship thing arose, I suspect, because they wanted to give same-sex couples the right to marry. But I think maybe the more conservative as parts of society were like, whoa, this can't happen. So they had to figure out some kind of a compromise. How do we fudge this? How do we give people essentially the right to get married when they're same-sex without actually calling it marriage?
Right.
So they come up with you know, being able to register a de facto relationship. But in the family law aspect of it, even whether you're registered or not, is not determinative. So you can be in a same-sex relationship that's not registered and still be a de facto. So there's a lot of confusion.
I get the want to protect yourself in all aspects. But if you had to give sort of general advice to people out there that are entering a relationship, what are the main things they should look out for? Because I imagine entering some sort of formal agreement with your partner is not always
it's a difficult
it's
discussion
difficult,
to have.
Yes.
Then you kind of got to look at your situation. If you're a person who already has something in terms of assets, you need to be getting this agreement if there's an imbalance between you and the other person, because you're the one who's going to stand to lose. So it's really in your interest to get one put in place. It also just depends on the relative ages. If you're both very young, you both don't have anything, you're getting together, you're going to build a life together, you might not need one. But if there's an imbalance in terms of, you know, maybe someone's inherited a house from grandma, the other one is starting from nothing, maybe someone's starting with a lot of debts already, maybe they're in their 30s or 40s.
And you don't want to be saddled with that if you're
saddled with that. You know, you've got to, and I think a relationship should be strong enough to survive those kind of conversations. Because if you can't have a conversation about your finances and where you're at in life, you know.
I will say though, I'm the kind of person that if my partner had a lot of debts, I would do everything I could to help that person, you know, to the level that, and also I just want to say that my greatest asset is my partner. She's probably
There we go. Well done.
Yeah.
That was great, Harrison. Well done. Yes, everyone that saw you
covered myself for tonight. Yeah.
No, good work.
So you don't need a financial agreement, but everybody else, please go get one.
Yes, good idea. Yes.
It's interesting what you say about you could be considered to be in a relationship even if you didn't know. And that brings up an interesting point for me and Harrison, because we were both on Married at First Sight. We got married to strangers on a TV show. Is there a possibility?
Well, just caveat to that is that my partner knew who I was before I got married to her. You got married to a stranger.
Yeah, I did get married to a stranger.
I got married to a stranger, but my partner knew everything about me before walking down the aisle.
Okay.
Does that still count?
No, doesn't count.
Right, okay.
What I'm trying to say is the marriages on Married at First Sight, could they be considered legally binding?
Well, if it's a legal marriage, it's legally binding.
It wasn't a legal marriage.
Not a legal marriage?
No.
But you appeared in photos together, you went on holidays together, you had sex,
Yeah.
you did all this other stuff.
Probably a de facto
Yeah,
relationship.
but we've done all that, Dean. I mean, we're not.
Probably a de facto relationship. But if it's very short duration, then you know, it's all about contribution.
Yeah.
So what's the duration before a relationship's considered de facto?
That's a good question.
Again, there's no specific duration where you can say that it is or it isn't de facto, but maybe that's not such a big concern, because in short-term relationships, if you're separating from a short-term relationship, the financial split is going to be predominantly based on your contributions. It's different to a long-term relationship. So once you've been together for a long time, you know, probably more than 5 or 7 years, and you've had children together, then it's not just about contributions, or the way that it's looked at becomes different. So in very long-term relationships, long-term marriages, especially with children, the courts would kind of say, look, on a contribution basis, things have evened out over the years. Someone did the work, someone else stayed at home. Maybe someone did have some assets at the beginning, but that's all kind of become diluted by the passage of time. So we're going to split it 50-50 based on contributions.
So the
and
courts,
then they look at the other factors.
the court's taking a holistic approach.
They do.
And each case by case basis, rather than a broad sweeping.
Yeah, when you talk
get
about
this, you get that.
contributions,
Yeah.
it's holistic. And this is where a lot of people make a mistake. A lot of people will come to you with a spreadsheet and go, this is every single thing I've ever paid for, and this is every single thing she's ever paid for. And I've worked out that I paid for 90% of things. And although we've been together for 10 years, I think I should get 90% of it. And then you kind of have to educate them and say, it's probably not going to work that way.
It's crazy to see.
Amy, if you're watching this, it's lucky you, because
It's
I paid
crazy
for
to
everything.
see that spreadsheet guy's relationship didn't work out.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. And there are people like that, quite a few people out there.
Was he an accountant?
Some of them are accountants.
Was he a can?
But Harrison, you were spot on the money. It's a holistic assessment of contributions. You know?
Right.
You take out the garbage, you're making a contribution because the other guy doesn't have to.
Oh, that's that unpaid domestic labor we hear all about. Yeah.
It's raising children. It's a huge contribution. It's a difficult job, a really difficult job. And
That is fair. That is fair. Yeah. I see the effort that my partner puts in.
it's massive.
And
She must put in a lot of effort to deal with your bullshit.
It's actually unquantifiable the amount of, like, I couldn't put a monetary value on having a meal cooked when I get home. The bins taken out, my clothes are washed.
Wait, she takes out the bins?
Yes.
Bro, what
Yeah.
the fuck?
She does. It does my washing.
Is
Like
fuck-
this.
But
this
back me up here,
person-
mate. Do you take out the bins in your house or does your missus?
Yeah. Well, I think this is a really, really interesting.
I'm doing podcasts, man.
Yeah.
I can't be at home taking out the bins at the same time. What are you talking
You
about?
guys serious? You don't take out the bins.
So
Just take out the bins or what?
This is really interesting. This
I
is
take
really
out the bins.
interesting.
Men take out the bins. That's a man's job.
Yeah.
Do not. I take the bins in the
that's
house.
very bigoted and sexist of you, Dean.
Yes.
Women can take out the bins
Thank
if they
you.
want to.
Equal opportunity, right?
Yes.
But this is interesting because, like, in some relationships, like even long-term relationships, you actually do get one of the couple who does the heavy lifting because they might go to work and they also come back home and do their share of housework. They also go and do the shopping. They also do their share of cooking. And maybe the other one doesn't go to work. So I think genuinely in some long-term relationships, there definitely is one of the two that has done the heavy lifting. The difficulty is trying to prove that. And also it's a consensual arrangement that's persisted for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to deviate from the.
I have a question for you.
Just kidding. So I just need to clarify here. I'll get in big trouble.
Yeah.
Amy does do a lot around the house. I do take the bins out, and I think there are certain jobs that men should do, specifically dealing with the garbage and the bins and anything dirty and filthy. But Amy contributes a lot in our household, and it's stuff that I'm not good at, like dealing with laundry and picking like the bedspread that goes on and cooking. She's such a good cook, and like I'm not. If I cook food, it's like man food. It's like meat and salt and chips and stuff. She cooks.
Can we go back to the podcast and hear about how great Amy is? Amy's great. We all love Amy.
Just covering my ass. Love you, darling. Love you.
But I do have a question for you, and that is that I imagine some clients would come to you, now that we're on the topic of like this unpaid labor and blah, blah, blah. I imagine some clients would come to you and say like, oh, but I was the parent always taking the kids to soccer practice or like spreadsheet guy, I paid for everything on the other side of the fence, blah, blah. My question for you is, what is the most irrelevant like in the eyes of the court, what is the most irrelevant things clients will bring to you as like their big thing, right? And also, what is the most irrelevant when it comes to the courts, that the courts just don't care. They don't care that you took the kids to soccer practice, for example, but they might care that you did something else. Like
They would care about that. But one of the things that people think is really, really important, and this will come up in the context of parenting proceedings, is people will try to prove that the other person was really bad to them. And as just
character-wise, or
really
do
bad.
you mean
Yeah,
do you mean
like,
abusive?
like this person was just nasty to me. They were gaslighting me. They were nasty to me. And while that's understandable and relevant and stuff, but in the context of parenting, like often the court will say, well, how is that relevant to the children? Like, were they,
Right.
what were they like to the children? You've got to put your arguments kind of aside.
Child focused.
Yeah, you got to be child focused. And the fact that, in 2023, he said this and then this happened and then that happened, it might not be relevant.
He's
to parenting.
gaslighting me.
Yeah.
He's been gaslighting me.
You might just have to let that go and kind of work together. And
I've
try to
honestly never
focus.
heard that before, the word gaslight. This is new to me.
What's gaslighting?
Yeah.
What is it? I just
You know,
made that up.
90%
You
of
haven't been
people, yeah,
gaslit, you're just crazy.
90% of people who come to me in relation to parenting will tell me that their ex is a narcissist.
No.
That's what they call it.
God, fuck.
As something narcissist, and they're
everyone's
always
a narcissist.
gaslighting. Everybody's a
Yeah,
narcissist.
everyone's- Can I just say to all the women out there, especially, you use this word narcissist way too much, and I think the word narcissist now just means this bloke didn't pay me enough attention. That's all it's come down to.
And I hear men saying it as well.
Oh,
To
really?
be fair.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
is like everybody who comes and like the other parties are narcissists. It's just like,
Well, I just honestly think that not all, but I think some women attend therapy in order to get language that they can then weaponize against their partner. Like they can be like, well, you're an avoidant. You're an avoidant.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
a
mean?
good
Like
point.
they go to therapy to like do homework.
Yeah.
So they can go home and therapize
Yeah.
their own partner.
I don't know if they go to therapy for that reason, thinking that. But I,
said
think that,
some people
I think
do.
That, no, I
I
think it
reckon
definitely
some people
happens
do.
though, where they get brainwashed into this certain language. Oh, no, well, he's narcissist. He's narcissistic.
Yeah.
He's gaslighting you.
Yeah.
And often that therapist is probably just trying to make money and trying to make the person feel better about themselves, and then they'll go out and take that language into the real world. And
Well, they
and then as
also
a lawyer, we have to refocus them and just say, look, we can't have this ending up in your affidavit. It's probably not relevant. Being overly critical is going to only make you look bad.
especially with that evidence, right?
you
It's like
gotta
you always
get
have
rid
to
of it.
pertain to some sort of evidence. And I imagine people would therapist shop to find a therapist that validates them. The exact same way I imagine a client would come to you and hope you giving them the advice they want to hear. Does that happen quite a bit?
People lawyer shop all the time.
Lawyer shop, yeah.
Yeah, they do. First of all, people, understandably, they want to understand what things are going to cost. So that's
Which is where your fixed price services.
Look, fixed price doesn't necessarily mean it's cheaper, but it does give you the assurance of what you're paying. So for non-litigious matters, you absolutely just need to get a fixed price. Like if you and your ex have agreed about things, there's no reason why you shouldn't be paying a fixed price, and you should know 100% absolutely in advance what that's going to be, and there should be no deviation from it unless the scope of the work changes, right?
I hope all lawyers are listening to this podcast because this is like what you're saying is just blasphemy.
I'm really opposed to underquoting and overcharging, which is a really common and I think a very poor sales tactic because it burns the relationship and people talk. So I think it's better to be honest and upfront and just say, look, this is what it's going to cost. Someone might be able to do it cheaper. There's always someone who can do it cheaper. But I think I've got the most compelling mix of cost and quality because that's what you're looking for as a client. It's your level of kind of cost and quality trade-offs. I mean, if you have one lawyer working on your matter, of course, if you go to a bigger law firm and they put 3 lawyers on your matter, they'll probably be able to uncover some additional things or maybe push it a little bit more. But is that worth the extra cost? It often isn't. And you do see a lot of litigation going on where people have literally, and the judges call it chasing every rabbit down every burrow. And it's so you've got to just be a bit discerning and figure out when that is necessary and when it's not. I totally get it. If I'm doing like a large asset pool matter, we're going to be extremely careful to go and investigate every single, But for the run-of-the-mill kind of matter, where people are going to have spending excessive amounts of money chasing probably pretty marginal arguments, and that's going to really just annoy the bench and annoy the judges hearing the matter. You've just got to apply some judgment to it and figure out which are the arguments worth having. Don't be arguing.
What's the clear picture? What's the simplified version?
Yeah, try to build a case theory about what the case is really about, and then don't get too hung up about. This is a big thing in family law: is people get hung up about personal property and chattels. So you might be doing a $3 or $4 million farm involved, divorce settlement, and they're arguing about who chopped the wood pile and therefore who's going to get the wood. And you try to explain, look, forget the wood pile. And for some reason, it's just this fixation, or it might be who gets the SMIG mixer, and you're just like, go and buy another mixer, or who gets the ladder.
What about pets? What happens if there's a
pets
dog?
is a good one. Pets, I think, is different because and now the law has changed. The court can make orders about pets. So before they were just treated as chattels, personal property, but they were just treated as a chattel, and the court couldn't really make orders about pets. But now the legislation specifically says that they can make orders about pets.
Well, Gina and I have already agreed that if we do break up, I get to keep Dean. We've already come to that agreement.
So you are starting to see people like
because people use pets against their partner.
Yeah, and I think that's very
I mean,
sad.
if I get in an argument with Amy, I'm like, Midnight, come in here with me. You're sleeping with me tonight.
I'll give you another example. I was in a matter and there was horses were involved, and one person wanted the horse, the other person wanted the horse, and we were in a conciliation, and the senior judicial registrar said, "Who actually rides the horse?" And the person that was fighting to keep the horse doesn't actually ride the horse. And the court was so frustrated by that attitude. And it's just like, it's unnecessary.
But was
So
it
you
because
think-
the horse had sentimental value? Was it a racehorse? Why would
Or
they?
was it spite?
I think it was spite.
Spite, yeah.
It was spite.
You
Because it was
would you see a lot of
jointly owned-
spite in these matters, in divorces and family law? Do you see a lot of spite?
Yeah, unfortunately, there can be. I always try to put people, turn people away from that way of thinking and that way of living their life. But I also understand that when it's very recent, that there's a lot of emotions that people have to process. And when people come to me, they're at the kind of the worst point in their life. So I do have
Here's a
certain
bill.
amount of empathy. You got to look. Of course, we do this for a living.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it can be done in a way that kind of is human, and you can do well without ripping people off and without subjecting people to more stress than they're already going through. So that's really important, I think, and something to always bear in mind. And as sometimes clients often will actually put you through a lot of stress that might not be necessary.
Give me an example of that.
Move his mic forward.
I think the most difficult thing for a lawyer to deal with is when a client just refuses to accept their advice. So you're giving them advice. It's the right advice. They're just not taking it in. So you might suggest, look, let's get a barrister to talk to you about this. Let's see if their advice is the same. You know it's going to be the same. You get a good barrister. They provide the advice. The client's now heard it from two people. They're still not accepting it for whatever reasons. That can be very difficult. Now, our job is not to make the decisions. Our job, the client has the autonomy. Our job is to give advice. But at the same time, it does make your job extremely difficult when you feel that you've laid out the correct legal position, the rational thing to do, and they're just going against it. That can be very hard, Very hard.
Interesting. Have you, in modern cases these days with mobile phones, do they use text messages as evidence? Does that come up? Oh, he texted me this.
100%.
Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, you can just assume that anything that you text or email is going to end up, screenshotted and put into an affidavit. So you've got to be really careful about what that comes across. But in a co-parenting situation, there's really good apps that you can use.
Snapchat?
No. So there's actually apps which not only keep an audit trail of the communications, but they can also filter your communication before you send it.
Oh, really?
So that you'll type in something and the app might say,
You sure you want to say
yeah,
that?
like this seems very emotional. Is this the right thing to send? Or it'll say you can't use that kind of
It
language.
sounds like Instagram every time
think
I
it's
try to make
good.
a comment.
Yeah. I actually think it's good. I think it's good. I mean, use those apps. There's a subscription for it, but
What's
I think
the
it's
app
totally
called?
worth it. There's a number of different ones. I mean, I don't want to
Called
shill for one
Don't Be an
particular
A-hole, the
one,
app?
but one that I always recommend people to look at is Our Family Wizard, but there's others out there as well. Just shop around, go and see 2 or 3 different ones. I think
I
it's a
like
great
to fly by
solution.
the seat of my pants. I want to throw that fucking emotion out there. I'm not filtering my shit.
What would you
Probably
say
end up in trouble.
What would you say the biggest mistakes people make are when communicating with a co-parent that actually ends up getting used against them later? And obviously, text messages would be a big one, like being aggressive or whatever via text message would obviously get used.
I mean,
against you in
it
court.
it comes down to real basics. Like, first of all, don't call your ex a bitch. Don't put that in a text message. Like, even if you're
What about
thinking
the
it,
word whore?
just
Is there a
don't.
leeway on that?
Just be respectful. be child focused, be calm. If you need to take 5 minutes to walk around the block before you write the reply, if you need to even ask your lawyer about, is this a good reply to be sending, just do that, because once something is out there, it's going to live there forever, you know? And social media, especially, like sometimes people will post things related to their family law proceedings on social media. Like that's actually like a crime.
Really?
That's a crime.
That's crazy. Yeah, you see that. I've seen that on Facebook, especially, where it's like, Darren the arsehole didn't come home again last night. This is the last time this is happening. I'm so over this. And they're just looking for like attention or whatever. Like they're probably really upset, and it's a way to vent.
But when they're posting about things and there's ongoing proceedings, then that becomes potentially, potentially a crime.
You
talk about stuff
You
against
don't be uploading your court documents, to the group asking what to do, and don't be telling people about what's going on.
Apologies or something like that. Should be uploading them to social media.
You are allowed to upload
Be
a defamatory apology. You are allowed to upload that.
Okay.
That's defamation or different.
Totally
beast,
different
but
kettle of
obviously
fish. Yeah.
very important to maintaining a civilized society that we have
Correct.
defamation law.
Correct. Yes, that is true. So, I still want to find out what key mistakes people make when dealing with a vindictive co-parent, especially because your co-parent might know which buttons to press on you. And I think the advice of having a beer is great advice, but what are some key mistakes?
I didn't say that.
Didn't we say have a drink
I
or
said,
something?
go walk around the block and
Use the app.
right.
Speak to your lawyer. No one said have a beer.
I thought
Having
someone
a
said
beer is the worst advice you could possibly get.
Maybe that's what came into my
That's your
head.
fucking problem, dude.
Yeah.
I think this is your
Harrison,
The question
sometimes
is,
people,
what are the key mistakes people make?
having a beer.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having a beer.
Yeah, there is. It can
No,
make you
there's not.
drunk and give you bad judgment.
Family lawyers get a lot of phone calls on a Friday because there's things happening around changeovers and weekend arrangements.
Right.
And I always, if someone calls me like on Friday at 6:00, and I'll say to them, listen, I'm at the pub with colleagues and co-workers. I can't talk to you because I've had a few beers. My advice might be too optimistic. Like, let's talk about this on Monday. So if you want to talk to
When
me,
you're hungover,
call
we
me
talk
call
about
me
it.
before 4 on a Friday, all right?
Yeah,
And your lawyer.
If I'm messaging you at 4 a.m. on Saturday morning, probably don't take that advice.
That's right.
No,
Shit.
but I don't have a bag. I'm not coming to meet you at Chinese laundry.
You are
I just want to see my kid again.
But I mean, back to your question, don't allow yourself to be manipulated. Remain child focused.
Yeah.
And if sometimes that means that you kind of have to I'll use the word, sometimes you actually have to compromise and be the bigger person here and realize that strictly speaking, I am right, but I'm going to let it slide this time just to keep the peace. Sometimes that's a smart thing to do. Obviously, if it becomes a pattern and the other parent is not bringing little Johnny to changeovers every single week with the same excuse, you're not going to let that slide.
Yeah.
But if it happens once, pick your battles and make sure is it just really a one-off thing that's happened, and because, they've been coming to the changeover and they've had a fender bender, you can be reasonable about that, be civil about it, or is it something that is that every single changeover there's some new excuse? That's obviously something that you might need to look at enforcement.
What constitutes a reasonable excuse under the Act?
Yeah, very difficult question.
Circumstances. Every circumstance is going to be different, right?
This is the difficulty with the law. A lot of it is an interpretation.
I think Harrison wants you to write him a note just so we can get off any time.
A lot of it is subjective, and often given the same set of circumstances, 2 or 3 different judges might view things slightly differently, and that's not a flaw of the system. That's a feature of it, because the system has to be designed in a way that allows for human decision making to be involved. Otherwise, it'll be some kind of mechanistic, and very impersonal law, which would create real injustices. So there has to be discretion.
Prefer that. I probably would prefer like some sort of AI judge. It could be like, you have listed him as a narcissist 500 times. That is irrelevant. I'd kind of rather that than like some judge that might have sympathy for like absolute bullshit that goes into an affidavit, and the judge gets swayed by that just because it's emotive. You know what I mean?
Certain types of disputes do lend themselves to automated decision making, and I think you can see it already being used by insurance companies. So when people make an insurance claim, they will use AI to determine whether that's a claim that they should just pay because it's cheaper
Or
just to pay it,
investigate.
or investigate or oppose, and they'll run algorithms and stuff. And I'm pretty certain that there's some small claim resolution kind of services. I'm not sure where, but I'm pretty certain if we looked on the internet, there would be countries in which certain very small claims are able to be adjudicated by you uploading your documents, and the system will just give you a result. I'm pretty sure that already exists, and I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it's out there being used for some types of disputes. And I think potentially for property disputes in the future, there might be more reliance on those kind of prediction systems to predict what the outcome might be, and whether that's actually used by the court or whether it's used by your legal advisors. I think prediction systems are going to come into use. I know they're used a lot in US litigation in certain areas where they can type in, what judge it's before, what type of case it is, who are the plaintiff lawyers, who are defense lawyers, and the system will come up with, what's likely to happen.
Happened in the past and how could this
100%, yeah. I haven't seen it being used yet in family law, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time. But it won't be as scientific because there's just such a hugely discretionary area.
That's the issue with family law, is it's so contextual.
Yeah,
it's so
100%.
nuanced.
So the movie Minority Report is a form of AI that reads everyone's current behavior and predicts a crime before it even happens.
Scary stuff.
Didn't they have some weird virgin chicks in a pool, telling everyone what was going to happen? Or
Scary
something?
stuff. I hope we never get there.
So it basically is just like the legal system. You've got virgins on
like, Harrison, you had 3 beers. I know you're going to do some shit. Go to bed.
We've got a good family law system. Can I say we've got a really good family law system? A lot of sometimes people will come to you and they start off by complaining because maybe they've had a difficult lawyer-client relationship. Maybe they've been to court and it hasn't gone well at the first court event or whatever. And they'll come and say, the system's biased, the system's this. In my experience, it's not. And I have to say that the people in the courts, they're very hardworking for the most part and very, very much focused on the mission of providing justice and fairness to Australian families and helping children. You always have somebody who has a bad day and, might get a judge who's rude to somebody on a particular day. But when you think about the volume of work and the sheer amount of pressure those people are under, like I could never do that job.
Yeah.
How many
I'd be screaming at people.
How many cases would the average family court judge see in a day?
I don't know. I really don't know. But for example, if you're coming to a final hearing, there'll often be 2 or 3 matters listed on the same day. Just to make sure that if it settles, they're still able to use the rest of the day to hear something else. I mean, they are fully overloaded with work. I have no doubt about it. And if you look at the work of the judicial registrars, they'll be, going through lists, and they might have a 10 a.m. list, 12 a.m. list, 2 p.m. list. They'll be dealing with maybe 30, 40, 50 matters a day.
Wow.
It's just crazy.
And they would have been expected to read the documents and a lot of these things beforehand. Wow. It's just an unforgiving environment.
How could you read and remember 50 different cases worth of documents? That just doesn't seem plausible.
It's a really, really tough job. I wouldn't like to have that job. I wouldn't like it. And I think they do an amazing job. They probably don't get paid enough for it, to be honest.
Would this be a judicial registrar you're referring to?
Like judicial registrars and senior judicial registrars. I mean, they have such a high workload. So
even as a lawyer, you would have to read a lot as well. Do you guys have to learn speed reading or get better at reading and taking in notes? Or
Bart is a speed reader.
Really?
Yeah.
You're a speed reader.
Look, I still read in the conventional way, left to right and going line by line, but I'm pretty quick at it. There are people out there who are way faster than I am, and they use some kind of weird techniques.
Or they just scan the whole thing or something?
Yeah, there's some techniques like that. I don't use that. But I'm very fast at reading and writing. So that's not really a problem for me. But yeah, it does help to be faster. I mean, the legal system kind of the legal business in a sense was never incentivized to be efficient. Because if you're paying someone by the hour, it doesn't pay them to read your 20-page affidavit very quickly,
Yeah.
But
then again, the system's so backed up and clogged up. It's like if things were a bit more efficient, maybe we could get through more cases. I guess maybe your fees might go down a bit and lawyers might not make as much, but at the moment the system's clogged up. And if you have
It is
a basic
clogged up.
dispute, it's hard, it's so expensive and time consuming. How can we speed that up?
It's a kind of a paradox because it is clogged up, but it's also very efficient. So I would say that despite the efficiency, the demand is so great that they're still very busy. But I would have to say that the system we have here in Australia is very, very good. It's very much focused on trying to get you to resolve things amicably if you can, or by consent. So there's a lot of opportunities to try and work things out. And the system is good. Look, it has to be process-driven and procedural. But in general, from everything that I've seen, the people in the system, the family report writers, the judicial registrars, the judges, and most of the lawyers, everybody understands that we're dealing with difficult things. We don't want to make it more difficult. Look, there's always going to be aggressive people. I don't do that kind of aggressive style of litigation. I don't like it because I think that you can be principled and get really good results without being aggressive. Often aggression hides kind of weakness. So I don't like that style of litigation, but some people engage in it and, we have to deal with it. But I just like the idea of being calm, civil, principled, and giving good advice. And, most cases will settle at some stage in the process.
Do you see a lot of cases settling at a final hearing or beforehand?
We literally had one yesterday that settled on the day of it was a 3-day final hearing starting, and they literally settled on the day of the hearing. And that's frustrating sometimes because you think, you could have settled this months ago, half a year ago. But always remember, to make a settlement, it needs both parties to come to the table.
And to feel the pressure of what they're about to do.
And isn't it a lot about the cost? Because you've got barristers and whatnot on the day of the actual, if it's going to court, you got to pay a barrister, right? And then people just like, shit, it's like
I think what Harrison just said is a spot on, the pressure. So pressure is a part of the system that leads to settlement. Like it's just a reality. It just it's economics. Is the argument that you're having economically worth it? Now, when it comes to children, that's a really tough decision because for most people, they will, that's not a matter of money for most people, right? But when it comes to property proceedings, I think it's possible to be a lot more rational and say, look, maybe they want 50,000 more than they're entitled to, but that's what it's going to cost me to take it to final hearing. I'm just going to settle it.
And all the stress and
all the stress and not being able to live your life and not being able to do other things. But when it comes to parenting, I acknowledge that it's really, really difficult because what value do you put on spending time with your children? It's just, wow, I'd hate to be in that position. I'd hate to be in that position, especially when kids are young and they grow up pretty fast. That time is really valuable and that time is decaying because they're getting older. By the time they're teenagers, you might not be able to spend much time with them because they've got their own lives going on. So I can understand why people get into really bitter and hard parenting disputes. And it's really sad because a child needs both parents in their life. As long as it's safe, as long as both parents are safe for their child, the child actually needs both parents. They want to be connected with both parents. And that's a message that as lawyers we keep telling our clients. I have uncomfortable conversations sometimes with clients. I say, look, could you please make sure that your child can connect with their father? The client might go, you don't understand how nasty he was to me. He's this, he's a narcissist, he's controlling. And you're like, listen, that's your relationship with him, but the child needs him. You've got to facilitate it. And some people are very, very, very hesitant to accept that or acknowledge that. And that's sad. That's sad. And they need to engage with psychologists and parenting after separation courses because they've got to not see themselves as the center of the world because for children, the child is the center of the world,
And mother and father, you need a mother and father figure in raising a kid. You
need two parents,
Do you ever have situations where a couple is going at it maybe for a couple of months and trying to, take each other to court, take each other's money, and then they get back together? You ever seen that?
I haven't, but I'm sure it happens,
I wonder if that ever happens, if like they're battling and then they, talking about the kids and it's like, actually, I really love you and I love the kid. Let's just get back together.
What I do see is when people kind of come to me in what I call the pre-separation stage, where they call you up and say, we're going through a really rocky patch. I just want to know, I want to model some scenarios. What would it look like financially if we separated? what would it look like in parenting wise if we separated?
Right. Way up what
Yeah.
it's actually going to look like if they
And
get
look,
separated.
I'm not the person to tell them whether they should or shouldn't separate, right? Because for some people, a bad relationship, it's the net gain will be getting out of it. But for some people, maybe it's marginal, and maybe if they stick it out for a little bit longer, maybe the children will turn 18 and then they can think about it. But it's a really personal decision. But when there's safety issues, when there's family violence, a lot of people, they just don't really have a choice. They've got to get out of it. And sometimes you get people who call you up and they're literally calling you from a car in the car park, whispering in their own car because they're so scared of their partner.
Wow.
And they're asking you, what should I do? I want to separate. I don't feel safe in the house if I raise this with him or her, because sometimes it's the female doing the family violence. It's not always the male. But, and how is it going to work out? And I say to people, look, if you're truly concerned about your safety, you need to get down to your local police station and go and talk to them about your situation, because it's not a lawyer's job to make you safe physically. Like, you've got to go and sort things out. Get an intervention order if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Get yourself safe in your house so that you can then negotiate. Like, how can you negotiate a property settlement if you're living in the house with someone you're afraid of? Like, how are you going to get a good deal? Yeah. It's not going to happen,
Yeah.
Get yourself safe first and then worry about all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not only the men who become victims of family violence. Sorry, it's not only the women. It's also the men. Like, I have clients, men have been the victims of it,
Well, nearly half of all reported domestic violence cases are the male victim.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think
you're going to make me Google that
cuts
one?
across the sexes.
Am I Googling that one?
Google
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Harrison likes to make these claims. Let's
Google nearly half of all domestic violence cases.
Live fact check
male
here.
Victim.
Yeah.
There's a whole
Is
gut.
it true that half or nearly half of domestic violence victims in Australia, reported domestic violence victims, are male? Harrison reckons so. What do you say, ChatGPT? All right, here we go. Live fact checking. No, it's not accurate. Once again, Harrison is wrong. It's not accurate to say that half reported domestic violence victims in Australia are male. If we're talking specifically about intimate partner or domestic violence overall, the best national data we have, mainly from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, shows about 1 in 4 women in Australia have experienced intimate partner violence since the age of 15. About 1 in 14 men.
Wow.
So not even close. Not even close.
Women. Yeah.
Harrison, once again, not even close to correct. So thank you for bringing up useless facts. I'm always going to fact check you. Women are far more likely to be seriously injured.
Yeah.
Or if anyone ever hears Harrison bring up factoids like that, fucking fact check them.
Yeah, fact check it.
Yeah, so no.
So women are 3.5 times more likely to be the victim of domestic violence, but that still leaves a lot of men who also let's not stereotype. It's not only the men.
And men are probably less likely to report it. Let's be real.
It seems to be that predominantly the men are the ones doing it.
But if you have to actually look at where the sources are too.
He's trying to Google it. He's trying to out Google me. All right.
Hold on. I've got this I've Googled nearly half of DV victims are men, right?
You looked up incels.com.au. What's it say?
But this is the femcel side of it, right? It's like womenaid.org.uk. I've never even fucking heard of that. And it's clearly a fem-biased fucking organization. And they're putting out statistics that it's from the fucking UK. It's not even...
What do they say?
Well, they're saying it's 30% of domestic related crimes where the victim was male. Like 30%, right? And the thing is, you need to remember too that I'm not saying that it's like reported domestic violence. I'm saying like nearly half of all domestic violence cases are a male victim. Men routinely underreport domestic violence because
interesting.
there is a stigma. Hold on, Bart. There is a stigma attached to male victims. And it's this idea of like, what you Mrs. Bastia, toughen up, cunt.
Are you saying
like all that
Gina
sort of
beat you up? Is that what's going on here?
It's not what's saying. I'm saying.
Is this a cry for help?
I'm just saying that I actually think there is a massive underreporting of male victims. And I actually think, and this is going to be the controversial thing that I'll say tonight, I think there's a massive overreporting of female victims where the man hasn't done anything and the woman will use the DVO system against the male. I've got many, many, many friends that have.
I'm sure there's an element.
I really
I'm
want to
sure
finish
there's
this
an
point.
element of that.
I really
Yeah.
want to finish this
Carry
point.
on.
I've got many, 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 many friends, and I've met and spoken to many, many, many men through Instagram and other social media platforms that have informed me that they did nothing wrong, and that one night they're at home watching telly. The cops rock up at the door and take him down the station for a statement where the missus in the room next door accused him of bashing her. Right? I've got a friend of mine
I've heard it once or twice.
it happens all the time. So let's not, mate. There was that chick from The Bachelorette, right? Going on,
Decapitated the guy. You mean the chick from Beauty and the Geek that cut the bloke's head off?
I'm saying that the husband didn't report it, and that it only came out when she got on TV that she was throwing a fucking chair at her husband with her daughter sitting right
the
there.
anecdotal evidence is there. It just hasn't come through in the statistics. I mean, I'm
100%.
pretty certain that women would still be more represented, but as you say, there's a lot of men who are suffering through this as well.
I read an article. It might have been The Guardian or something else, where they actually reported that nearly half of all domestic violence cases are male victim, but the men drastically underreport. So look, I'm happy for you to feel like you're right in this case.
Thank you. I am once again.
Mate,
No, it's fine.
all
I know
hail
what you're
Deano,
saying.
but
I know what you're saying.
I think
and
I'm on the money with this one.
I know what you're saying. And when I was getting divorced from my first wife, we got in a massive argument because I was pissed off about what had happened. I found out she was cheating on me. I was angry. I wasn't violent in any way, but we were yelling really loud, right? The neighbors called the police.
Yeah.
And the police come over, knock on the door, grab her, say, hey, come out with me, and assume that the male was being violent towards the woman. There was no violence happening at all. There was just yelling. But if anyone was being an arsehole, if anyone was in the wrong, it was her. Then, so they took her outside and went, oh, is he beating you or whatever? They just assumed that it was the male beating the woman. And I'm just like, I get it. I get why they do that. But I was also like, I'm the victim here. I'm the one that's been cheated on. No one's hurt anyone. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm upset. I'm yelling. Yes, she was yelling
Well, you're
too.
expressing emotion, right?
I was expressing emotion.
You got to be really careful with that because yelling can definitely meet the criteria of domestic violence these days, family violence. And I read an article, you guys probably would have read it in the newspaper, it was last week, saying that prisons in New South Wales are so overcrowded with family violence offenders that people are literally sleeping on the floor. Like apparently the prison system is just bursting at the seams. So I think it's good that it's being taken seriously. And I think as a society, we need to really do as much as we can to curb family violence.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
Do you think people have gone to jail for yelling at their missus?
No, I don't think that happens.
Okay.
I think the people who are I don't know, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but I suspect that you wouldn't go to jail for yelling. But, I mean, that could be extreme cases, I don't know. But I just think that, obviously.
I guess there could be cases if you're constantly yelling at someone for no reason and berating them.
Yeah.
In my case, I had a bloody good reason.
Yeah.
And my ex at the time just went, no, everything's fine. No one's hurt.
And I think there's a distinction between a one-off incident at the time of separation where you're both like, we're separating, you're having a blue about it, versus someone who's actually living in an abusive relationship and being systematically subjected to financial abuse and different forms of family violence. And the law has changed that, previously there could be compensation for that in property settlement proceedings, but it was in case law. Whereas now it's in the legislation, like you can actually get a percentage adjustment based on family violence.
Really?
So I think that might also have the unfortunate side effect that people are then more incentivized to try and
say,
run
he was beating
that
me, I
part
want
of
more
their
money.
case. Yeah.
No, I didn't mean to belittle what you were saying before, Harrison, and I do get what you're actually saying. And I think you're right. And I think it does go underreported, the manipulation by women of men. Whether it's violent or not, I think women can be very manipulative, and that never really gets talked about.
Well, look, I hear what you're saying. I think it's a tough one because
are women smarter than men? Is there statistics about that?
I think they're better at
bell curve,
manipulating.
no. If you look at the bell curve,
But
no.
that's sort of IQ. What about EQ? What about emotional intelligence?
Well,
I think women are
definitely higher EQ. I would say, definitely.
And that's what makes you a good manipulator.
Well, it can. Subversive narcissism, or what's it called when you're you're not an overt narcissist. You're a subversive narcissist, something like that.
I don't know.
Get to your point. I agree. However, there are a lot of shit cunt men out there.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
Of course.
So I'm not going to apologize on behalf of men for that stuff because I've seen and heard the other side of the fence, and it's fucking horrific what some women go through.
100%.
Right? And those men should be treated worse than how they treated that woman by other men. Like, this is what it feels like to be, you know what I mean? But as I was saying before, a lot of men are the victims of this kind of abuse of the system. The systemic abuse of men is not, it's not bruises and cuts. It's the police getting called on a father who just didn't agree with his wife, and now all of a sudden he's been falsely accused of something. And I really think social media has opened the can of worms on the female side of the fence, their behavior. So I'm not apologizing on behalf of men. That's not what I'm saying. But I will say that social media has given rise to access to the information where I think women make a lot of false accusations against men in order to use the system, especially the DVO system, where men that have never laid a finger on their partner are now being accused of being an abuser. And if they get a DVO, this is the other thing, if they get the DVO charge against them where they get taken down the cop shop, and all you have to do is say, I've feared for my safety. That's all you have to say as a woman to get the DVO against the man. And now it's not slander or defamation for that woman to go on Facebook and go, my ex is an abuser, I've just got a DVO against him. That's actually not defamation because it meets the criteria of a true statement. So you've got to remember, like, there are some women out there that would use...
But wouldn't the true statement be that my partner's been either charged with some sort of offense? I mean,
you're coming out from a legal standpoint. I'm saying, like, that, you know, like, yes, there is the 100% of what the law would say is not defamation, but I'm saying that there's enough in there that they could use that as a true statement to ruin that guy's life. You know what I mean? I see it all the time.
A lot of
sorry, one last point. I've had a fucking female podcaster try to use that against me, where she said she found a DVO record of a guy with the same name who lived in another part of the state, and shared it all over social media saying that I had a DVO against me and I was an abuser in a previous relationship. Complete fabrication.
That sounds defamatory.
Complete defamation. But what I'm saying is I've firsthand seen and been victim of what I'm saying. So it's not shit talk. I know what I'm talking about here on this issue.
But you got to understand that the reason it's able to be weaponized is because in general men are more violent.
100%,
That's the only reason it's believable, because blokes do it a lot more.
We're learning now, and Bart raised it before, there's different forms of abuse. There's the abuse using a system to attack a man, or there's a man using physical violence against a woman. There's different forms of domestic violence, and I honestly think that
financial abuse and all that.
I honestly think that abuse of the system that we have to protect actual female victims, abusing that system against good men should be considered domestic violence and should be held to the same standard.
It's misuse of the, you know.
Yes.
And when you make false reports, you're also taking away from resources that should be directed towards actual real cases. You know, I mean, the police just run ragged because of this stuff. I mean, a lot of it is genuine, but for the for every 2 or 3 genuine reports, there must be a fake one or or an exaggerated one.
When a woman is making that false accusation and taking up that police time, they can't come when I'm bashing my missus. Yeah. You know what I mean? They
and
can't
also
attend
just
to that,
being accused of something.
Exactly.
In the social media age, just being accused of something, it's almost as good as being found guilty, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
You're guilty just by being accused sometimes, especially online.
Well, I mean, the last 5 years, you're guilty about being a male. Yeah. Like, you're a man, you're guilty of something, you know what I mean? Whether it's systemic racism or
so you can be a boot maker your whole life and be known as a boot maker. You fuck one goat. That's how it is with social media.
Oh fuck.
Shit.
But I don't agree with the proposition that the court system, the family law system, is biased against men.
Good. That's good. That's refreshing to hear.
You hear that a lot especially from guys.
From Harrison.
And it just hasn't been my experience. It hasn't been my experience. I think the system is fairly objective.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand that a lot of people feel that it isn't.
Yeah.
but I certainly have. As an insider, I wouldn't say that. And there's, if there's actual safeguards in place. Like if you're before a judge and you think that the judge is somehow not being objective, like there's ways to deal with that.
How?
Put in a complaint.
Well, first of all, if it's in a live courtroom situation, the barrister will do their best to deal with the perceived bias, but ultimately you can appeal, and no judge wants to have a whole lot of appeals against their name. Yeah. So all this stuff about bias, like I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. There's definitely people who come out of it and they didn't get what they wanted, and then they want to spin their wheels, and a lot of people also don't like to take personal responsibility for the situation they're in. Yeah. It's easier to blame somebody else, whereas sometimes we do stupid things. We have to pay the tax.
No, I think we're very lucky to have the system that we have in this country. I know other countries. I think in China there's this thing where if you're driving along the street and you hit like a bike rider, you're better off just running them over and killing them, because the legal shit that's going to come out of it, at least if they die, you can just go, oh, it's an accident, he just ran in front of me. But then, like, I've heard that is actually what happens in China.
Crazy.
People will just they'd rather, if there's proof that I did something wrong, then the legal system over there is so overblown and unfair and just completely crowded that you're better off just killing the person.
So it sounds a bit extreme.
I have every time you need a park, you just mow down a bunch of pedestrians because it's actually easier.
We've all been stuck behind cyclists before and thought about it.
Oh, bro.
Come on.
I wouldn't try it over there. 100%. They do have the death penalty over there, so I wouldn't be trying it.
Are cyclists actually, under the law, are they considered a person?
No, I think you get 10 points on your license. You get 10 pro merit points.
Okay.
Like if you're down to 1 point, you're on like a good behaviour, you get a cyclist, it goes back up. Yeah. This is not legal advice. We have to say this is not legal advice.
I'm not sure I like the course you're taking, because I was a roadie for many years.
He's a cyclist.
I'm not anymore. I'm not anymore. I'm not a cyclist anymore, but I used to be a roadie. But I am
a roadie. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, a road cyclist. I do different things now. I am a member of a club.
Pottery club?
No. So we do. I'm going to put a shout out here to my club. I'm kind of the founding president of it. The other guys are going to hate this, but I'm going to say I'm the founding president. We have a club called the Canyon Curry Club. So we're a bunch of guys that like outdoor activities. That's kind of my
after having a curry.
So this is where first we go and do the outdoor activity.
Yeah.
Usually
then you go for a curry.
Usually it's something extreme with a possibility of death.
Because otherwise you just be all shitting yourself in the woods.
And then we go and have the curry afterwards. When we come out of it alive and everybody's good and safe, then we go and have a curry. And we call it the Canyon Curry Club because we do a lot of canyoning.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know what that is. It's kind of going and abseiling into a canyon, progressing through it and climbing out. So and then we go and have a curry afterwards. But we do other things. We do whitewater stuff as well.
Have you done? Is it Butterbox?
Yeah, we've done that.
Yeah, and then there's another one. I can't remember the other name of the canyon where they filmed this. They just filmed a movie, Apex. There, you can actually abseil down into the. So I've done that one. It looks fun.
Some great canyons, some great abseils. It's exploded in popularity.
Yes.
And
there's so many great tours now.
Yeah.
For a couple of $100, you can jump on
do it on a commercial basis. Like we do it obviously privately, so we're responsible for our own equipment, our own safety, navigation, getting in and out, carrying ropes and all that. But you can do it commercially. It's great fun. The danger is people who are going there and they're not doing it commercially and they don't know what they're doing. They haven't had training courses. They haven't got experience. They don't have experienced people with them.
Well,
they've read a guide,
right? Yeah,
and they go and get themselves into trouble. Yeah. So don't do that. And which kind of might be a segue into talking about people who do family law on their own, kind of self-represented litigants, kind of. So because a lot of people.
That's a really bad segue, but we'll go with it.
We've got to stay on track. We've got to stay on track.
Tell us about people who represent themselves in family law. There you go. That's a good segue.
Some of them do a really good job.
Yeah.
Some of them not so much. But for a lot of people, it's the only option. Like they don't qualify for legal aid. They can't afford legal fees. And they have to do it by themselves. And it can be very difficult. Of course.
Go and see Bart. Give him all your money and he'll take care of you.
Thank you.
Well, no, Bart
I agree.
Bart has like different things in place to help people where they know that, okay, like I might get Bart to do A, B, and C, but I can do D, E, and F on my own,
Yeah.
or whatever, however it happens about. I've taken it from A, B, and C. Now I need Bart for D, E, and F, and Bart comes in and he's got fixed prices. I mean, that's like
I think for some people, that's a
most
good.
people's-
For some people, it's a good approach.
Yeah,
for
100%.
some people,
Yeah,
it's
the
a good
one
approach.
court case I've been through in my life, I learned that lesson. I didn't represent myself. I did get a lawyer, but it was just going to the meetings and seeing the piles and piles of paperwork, this high, literally this high of paperwork. I was like, I'm glad I'm not dealing with all that. These guys earn their money, and they're actually worth every penny. So I get it. You guys do work really hard. It's a difficult job. It's an emotional job. So, yeah.
Some people overcharge, I think. I try not to be that guy, but not everybody is always worth every penny. But in general, yeah, especially when you look at barristers, like the more expensive barristers, you have more experience and hopefully more skill than the younger ones. But like in my family law practice, I tend to brief female barristers because there's so many excellent female barristers. They're just so freaking good. But yeah, with barristers,
We've been
generally,
good
the
at
more you pay,
arguing.
the more you pay, the more you get.
Fuck, we're gonna
especially
get
with
cancelled
barristers.
for this one podcast.
I've been cancelled for years. What are you talking about? I don't care. Nah, awesome, man.
What makes a good barrister?
First of all, they've got to actually read the brief, right? I don't like to brief. I wouldn't brief somebody that, let's say I've briefed them before and they've got a lot of experience, a lot of reputation. Maybe they're a bit over the whole thing and they're still doing it. And you kind of turn up to court and it's very obvious that they haven't read the materials or they haven't read them to enough level of detail. That for me is like a big no. I'll never brief that person again. So, but that's a small percentage of people, but they're out there. So your lawyer should know who to avoid, and then you just pick the top performers. The people that that they're going to be across all the materials you sent them. They've actually done the preparation. They're really good at what they do. And they're going to turn up and add a lot of value to your client's case. And there's a lot of them out there. And they're just fantastic. I love it when the client has a budget for a good barrister. It makes my life so much easier. And of course, I don't do contested hearings. So when it actually gets to a final hearing, when it gets to, let's say, an interim defended hearing, I will get a barrister in. And you kind of would be at a disadvantage if you don't get one.
No, awesome. No, it's been good, man. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience before we finish up? Is there anything else you wanted to bring up, Harrison, or?
Mate, I think we've covered all bases.
Yeah, I just hope that we haven't bored people today. And
No.
We've talked about
I did have one last quick question. What is the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen a client do in or out of court?
I'm glad you asked that one. But I've been in a matter where client was kind of representing that he didn't have all that much money and that he couldn't afford to pay, spousal maintenance and all that. And then he came to court wearing, a gold watch on one hand and an Apple Pro watch on the other hand and blinged out and all this gear. And you're like, you just think about the message that you're sending here. Think about the message that you are sending physically.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And do you come across cases where probably usually the male, let's face it, that's made a shit ton of money and has it hidden in tax havens or under someone else's name? How much of your job at that point is to just get into the tax law and how things are hidden? And are you able to go and find where the assets are hidden and stuff like that?
Yeah, you're talking about disclosure, and that's a huge issue in family law. So our system is based on basically show and tell, not hide and seek. You're supposed to disclose what you have. A lot of people will try to hide things, and inevitably they do get caught out. And
but aren't there legal loopholes where you can hide things in certain?
Don't try it. Honestly, don't try it.
What if everything's in your mother's name?
Really? So even if it's in someone else's name or whatever, a judge can still go, "No, you're trying to hide that. We're going to take half." So
there's what's called a transaction to defeat a claim. So if you do some kind of a transaction to try and take money or an asset out of the asset pool just for that reason, that can be set aside and can be clawed back.
Yeah.
But if it's something legitimately owned by your mum, it's not going to be part of the asset pool.
But
right?
what if, I know there's people out there that when they're starting a business, they know it's going to be successful. They may not have even met their wife at that time. They go, "Oh, I'm going to put this money in a family trust," or this or that, or everything from this business goes offshore to some Bahamas bank account or whatever. They're thinking ahead, and then they get married. Then later, turns out, they get divorced. Can the wife then go after that money that's been like hidden away or stashed away?
So a lot of people who've spent a lot of money setting up all these complicated structures, trust structures, and all that stuff are very shocked to learn that the family court has the powers to basically essentially look for all that and say, who's the real owner and controller of that asset, and just ping it home to you on your side of the balance sheet.
Really?
Wow.
Absolutely.
So even though you've insulated yourself, you can still be exposed in family court.
The family court has extremely broad powers to adjust property interests.
Interesting.
I do have one more question, and that is that, let's say, what advice do you give to a client who might be the first call date or maybe an interim hearing or something like that, where you actually are going in front of a registrar or a judge? How should they dress? How should they appear?
Yeah, talking about self-represented people.
No, I'm talking about like either your clients or self-represented. Like you're going into court that day. How should they look
Look, I would
to maximize their opportunities?
You've got to realize that it's still a conservative environment. Dress conservatively.
No thongs, no shorts.
It's a formal
It is.
situation.
Yeah.
Would you advise people to be in a suit?
Well, that can go both ways. Sometimes in a suit you might look like the defendant. So maybe smart casual.
What if you were
Smart
really
casual for a court?
Smart casual or business casual. I'd definitely wear long pants, obviously clean.
Do women ever
long
dress?
sleeved shirt if you can.
Do women ever dress in a manner that is more likely to get them sympathy from a judge?
I don't know about dress, but I have been in one matter where someone literally came in on crutches and hobbling as if they had a broken leg. And then as soon as the hearing was over, they were running up the stairs.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Did they win?
No, it was just a very preliminary tussle, a preliminary stoush in the whole big battle, but I thought it was a bit funny.
That's so funny. So you'd saying collared shirt, what about like blazer?
For a bloke, talking
yes.
about a bloke,
Yeah.
I would honestly just wear a clean pair of pants, long pants, a clean collared shirt. You don't want to overdo it. If you're the kind of guy who habitually wears a jacket, then put on a jacket. But don't go and buy one just.
And for women, how should they dress?
Again, I would say conservatively. It is, the courtroom is a conservative environment. It's a friendly environment in the sense that
That's not the impression I get.
Look,
It's supposed to be a civilized
civilized is what I'm trying to
environment.
say. Yeah,
Correct.
it's a civilized,
It's polite and
environment.
civilized,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so all of the aggression is passive in a courtroom.
Don't wear a bring back the beef t-shirt is what he's saying, basically.
The aggression has no place in the courtroom.
Right.
In my view, but there are definitely some lawyers and barristers who are more aggressive in making their submissions than others, but I wouldn't brief that type of person. I prefer to brief someone who's very calm and principled and who can calmly, from A to Z, take the judge through the argument and explain what's relevant and why, and what the relevance of this document is, and just build up your case progressively in that way, in a principled and calm way. Those are the best barristers.
And do you see like any difference between the amount of cases won between more aggressive barristers or more civil
There's
barristers?
no data on that. There's no data on that. But it's like
Depends on the judge too, right?
it just violates my don't be an asshole rule as well. Like
You have a don't be an asshole rule?
yeah, I do for myself
Harrison
personally.
does not have that rule.
I'm never going to be one of Bart's clients.
I sometimes fail in that, but I do try to live by that kind of method. Yeah.
All right.
It's a good note to end on, I think. Don't
Good
be
advice.
an asshole, basically.
Don't be an asshole. Everyone out there, don't be an asshole.
Do not be an asshole.
Some of us, it's too late, but you can always move
Sucks for
forward.
Bart. He's had to sit here with
Sucks
two
for
other
Bart.
souls.
Yeah, exactly.
We all have our days. We all have our days and our moments, and just don't be afraid to. It's like the old schoolboy thing, If you've stuffed up, put your hand up, say I'm sorry, and move on. Take the punishment of this punishment, but just suck it up.
Yeah, fair enough.
Don't be an a-hole.
Or just don't get married in the first place. It's probably the best idea, I think.
Don't
Well,
commit.
you'll be
Don't
just Facto,
don't
man.
commit intimate partner violence, whether
Yeah,
you're
well,
man
there you go.
or female.
Yeah,
just
true, yeah,
just
yeah.
don't do it.
100%.
Just don't
That
do it.
falls under being an arsehole. If you
Yeah, it
commit
certainly
intimate
does.
partner violence, then you deserve
it certainly
everything that's
does.
coming your
Everything
way.
you get. Yeah, 100%.
That's a good
So-
note to end on.
One last thing, Bart. Where can people find you if they need your help?
Well, I hope they don't need my help, but if they do, I'm on the internet.
Oh, the old internet. They don't have to write a letter. Did you want to throw out a web address
No,
or?
I don't use the fax, and I don't do handwritten letters anymore.
All right, homing pigeon.
Homing pigeon, yeah.
No.
Just janofamilylaw.com.au.
janofamilylaw.com.au.
Do
But
we
you know-
actually have to say I don't have a
You know
fax
that-
machine in 2026?
You know what? You know what? You're going to laugh. There are certain industries in Australia in 2026 that still require you to have a fax machine.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Like what?
Medicine.
Yeah, that
I
makes
think
sense. A lot of old doctors.
It doesn't make sense.
A lot of boomer doctors
But,
out
yeah.
there, yeah.
Apparently, like there's my brother's in the field. He's
Because you have a physical signature.
he's a doctor, and I don't know if it's still the case, but I know for a long time he was complaining about that medical records can only be transmitted, I think, by fax because there's a belief in the system that faxes are more secure than emails.
Wow.
I don't know if that's still the case, but yeah, I think when he was a junior
So
doctor,
you can send
talking
a
about that a
highly
lot.
secure email,
exactly.
or what? Even WhatsApp's encrypted.
Exactly. I'll have to ask him if that's still the thing. But I
I'm
remember
sure
him
there's
talking about it.
platforms that are super encrypted. Like,
Yeah,
just
I mean, a fax
email.
is not secure at
just
all.
send me an Instagram DM. You know, tell me that my piss came back hot via Instagram. You know, just say you've got herpes via Instagram.
But yeah, definitely find me on the internet. If your lawyer doesn't use email,
Maybe get a new lawyer
Maybe get a new lawyer
or self-represent. All right. Thanks so much, Bart. You're a legend,
thanks
mate.
a lot, mate.
Mate, thank you.
Thanks, Harrison.
See you guys next time. If you got anything else you want us to talk about or any guests you want us to get on, let us know.